My name is Lillian Brooks. I turned 33 last winter. And for most of my adult life, I've known exactly where I stood in my family, quietly positioned just outside the spotlight, standing in the long shadow of my older sister. Her name is Ashley Brooks. Ashley is 4 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, she has been everything our parents admired. She was the daughter they spoke about with pride, the one whose life milestones were celebrated like national holidays. She did everything right, or at least everything they considered right. She married her college sweetheart at 25. By 28, she had twin daughters, Mila and Sophia, and a home straight out of a real estate brochure. A white colonial in Westchester County. A picket fence, a golden retriever named Buddy. She hosted Thanksgiving dinners that looked staged for magazine spreads and sent handwritten thank you notes within 48 hours, because that's the kind of woman Ashley was. And then there was me. I stayed single, focused on my accounting career. I rented a modest one-bedroom apartment in downtown Hartford, a place that suited me just fine. It was clean, quiet, and mine. I had a healthy 401k, a growing investment portfolio, and no debt beyond my car payment. Apparently, none of that counted. My parents, Albert and Susan Brooks, never criticized me directly. They didn't have to. Their disappointment lived in the questions they asked, the comparisons they made without naming them. "Don't you want children while you're still young?" my mother would ask during our monthly dinners, her voice light, as if she were commenting on the weather. "Ashley's girls are getting so big," my father would add. "It's such a shame they don't have cousins to play with." Or my favorite, "You're still in that apartment, huh? When are you going to settle down somewhere permanent?" I learned to smile, to redirect, to talk about work or the weather, or literally anything that didn't invite another quiet judgment about the life I was building. For a long time, I believed that if I just worked hard enough, saved smart enough, eventually they'd see me the way they saw Ashley. That one day they'd talk about me with the same warmth, the same pride. But the truth settled in slowly, like sediment at the bottom of still water. I wasn't the daughter they bragged about at book club meetings. I was the daughter they assumed would always be fine. So I didn't complain. I showed up, I fixed their computer problems, I brought expensive wine to family gatherings, even when they forgot my birthday. I stayed polite, pleasant, emotionally distant. Distance felt safer, like armor. I didn't realize then that armor doesn't protect you when the people attacking you are the ones who raised you. Ashley's picture-perfect life didn't collapse all at once. It cracked quietly. Her husband, Trevor, had been having an affair with his dental hygienist for 2 years. Ashley found out by accident, hotel receipts stuffed in a jacket pocket while she was doing laundry. When she confronted him, he didn't deny it. Didn't apologize either. The divorce was swift and ugly. Trevor moved out within a week, took half their savings, and left Ashley with 8-year-old twins, a mortgage she couldn't afford alone, and the kind of heartbreak that rearranges your entire sense of reality. Our parents rushed to her side immediately. They offered sympathy, comfort, reassurance, but their retirement savings were locked in long-term investments, and their emotional support didn't pay bills. Ashley sold the Colonial, moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Stamford. The girls shared a room. The heat barely worked. I didn't hesitate. I paid Ashley's divorce attorney retainer $8,000, covered 4 months of rent when her part-time library job wasn't enough, watched Mila and Sophia on weekends so Ashley could job hunt or just sit in silence for a few hours. I never asked for thanks, never asked for repayment. I loved those girls, and Ashley looked so broken, like someone who had never imagined needing help and hated every second of it. Part of me believed that this crisis would finally show my parents who I really was, that maybe they'd understand I wasn't the daughter with something to prove. I was the daughter who showed up. They didn't see it that way. Instead, every conversation with my mother began with Ashley's struggles, followed immediately by questions about my love life. "Are you seeing anyone special yet?" she'd ask, as if my dating status somehow explained my sister's divorce. "You know," she added once, "Ashley could really use family support right now. Things would be so much easier if you had a husband to help out." I stayed quiet, helped where I could, told myself that family meant being there even when you felt invisible. But here's the thing about always being the responsible one. Eventually, people stop seeing your help as generosity and start treating it like obligation. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening in March. I was reheating leftover Chinese takeout when my mother called, her voice bright in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Lillian, honey, we have the most wonderful news," she said. "Can you come over tonight? Your father's home early, and Ashley will be here too." Her excitement felt rehearsed, polished. For a moment, I wondered if Trevor had finally agreed to pay child support, or if Ashley had landed a full-time job. "Is it about the girls?" I asked. "Oh no," she laughed. "Much better. This is too exciting to explain over the phone." I drove across town after dinner, curiosity tangled with unease. Something about her tone made my stomach tighten, but I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe, for once, it really was good news. Still, as I pulled into my parents' driveway, a sinking feeling settled deep in my chest. I didn't know yet what they were about to ask, but somehow I already knew it would change everything. When I walked into my parents' living room that night, it felt less like a family gathering and more like a carefully staged performance. My father sat in his leather recliner, hands folded over his stomach, television turned off for once. My mother perched on the edge of the burgundy sofa, posture rigid with anticipation, and Ashley sat beside her, twisting her wedding ring around her finger, the same ring she'd refused to take off even after the divorce papers were finalized. On the coffee table sat a thick manila folder, the kind banks use. "There's our successful daughter," my father said, standing to hug me before gesturing toward the table. "Go ahead. Take a look." Something cold slid down my spine. I opened the folder and scanned the first page. Legal language, interest rates, real estate logos. Then the title jumped out at me. Mortgage Agreement, Fairfield County. "What is this?" I asked, though my pulse was already pounding. My mother clasped her hands together, beaming. "It's for Ashley's new house." I looked up sharply. "You bought a house?" "A beautiful 4-bedroom colonial," she continued, undeterred. 2-car garage, finished basement, excellent school district. The girls deserve stability, Lillian. That apartment just wasn't suitable for growing children." I glanced at Ashley. She gave me a thin smile, but wouldn't meet my eyes. "That's great," I said carefully. "Really, Mila and Sophia will love having their own rooms again." I closed the folder and pushed it back toward my mother. She pushed it right back. "Oh no," she said softly. "Those papers are for you." The room tilted. "What do you mean for me?" My father cleared his throat, the sound he'd always made right before delivering bad news. "We've discussed this as a family, and we've decided you'll take over the mortgage payments." The ticking grandfather clock suddenly sounded deafening. "You're asking me to pay for Ashley's house," I said slowly. Ashley finally spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "After Trevor left, I have nothing, Lil. I can't give the girls what they need without help." I looked down at the numbers again. The monthly payment was staggering, more than my rent and car payment combined. "I already paid for your divorce," I said quietly, "and 4 months of rent." "Yes, and we're grateful," my mother said quickly, though her tone carried no real gratitude. "But this is different. This is about family." "No," I said. "This is about a decision you made without me." She reached for my hand, her touch light and patronizing. "We raised you. We gave you everything. Isn't it time you gave something back to the family that made you who you are?" The words landed like a slap. "You bought a house knowing she couldn't afford it," I said, standing abruptly, "because you assumed I'd cover it." My father didn't deny it. "You don't have a husband or children," he said flatly. "Your expenses are minimal compared to Ashley's responsibilities." There it was. The unspoken rule finally said out loud. "I'm not doing this," I said. My voice was steady, even though my hands were shaking. "This isn't helping family. This is financial manipulation." I left the folder on the table and walked toward the door. "Lillian, wait," my mother called. "We haven't finished discussing this." "There's nothing to discuss," I said without turning around. "You made a decision and expected me to pay for it. That's not how family works." I drove home on autopilot, my thoughts racing. I told myself they'd cool down, that once the shock wore off, they'd realize how unreasonable they'd been. I was wrong. The first call came Saturday morning, from my cousin Brittany, someone I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. "I heard what happened," she said sharply. "I can't believe you're being so selfish." "Excuse me?" I said, nearly dropping my coffee mug. "Ashley's a single mother. Those girls are your nieces. You're sitting on all that money while they're struggling." "You don't understand the situation," I said. "I understand enough," she snapped. "Family helps family." "She wouldn't do the same for me," I said quietly. "You're unbelievable," Brittany said, before hanging up. The calls didn't stop. Uncles, aunts, cousins I barely recognized, all repeating the same script. "You're selfish. They raised you. She has children. You don't." What stunned me most wasn't the anger. It was the certainty. as if my single life had somehow turned me into a communal bank account. The worst call came from my great-aunt Dorothy during my lunch break. "You're not getting any younger, dear," she said sweetly. "At least this way you'd be contributing to the family legacy." "So because I'm single," I replied, "I owe Ashley a house?" "Don't be dramatic." That night, I blocked every number. 2 months passed in silence. I threw myself into work, started yoga, let the quiet settle. Then the envelope arrived. Thick, official. I opened it at my kitchen table, and my blood went cold. Albert and Susan Brooks versus Lillian Brooks. They were suing me, demanding $380,000 in reimbursement for raising me. Food, clothing, medical bills, family vacations. There was even a section titled Emotional Support and Guidance During Formative Years. At the bottom, funds to be allocated toward completion of mortgage obligations for Ashley Brooks. They weren't even pretending anymore. I called the best attorney I could find. When Amanda Rodriguez finished reading the paperwork, she looked up at me and said, "They have no legal case." "Then why are they doing this?" I asked. She shrugged. "Pressure or entitlement, sometimes both." That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I realized something that made my chest ache. This was never about a house. It was about control. And they were willing to destroy our family to keep it. Once the lawsuit was filed, the silence didn't just break. It shattered. I hadn't even finished processing the reality that my own parents were suing me when the second wave hit. Opinions, accusations, judgments pouring in from every direction like I'd stepped into the center of a storm I hadn't created. The calls resumed first. Different numbers this time, some blocked, some unfamiliar. I let most go to voicemail, but curiosity, or maybe a stubborn need to hear the truth of how people saw me, made me listen. "You've changed," my Uncle Paul said in one message. "Money's made you cold." Aunt Linda cried into hers. "Your parents are devastated. I hope you can live with yourself." One cousin accused me of abandoning the family. Another suggested therapy, as if refusing to fund my sister's mortgage was a symptom of mental instability. No one asked how I was. No one asked why my parents had decided to sue their own daughter. The narrative had already been written, and I was the villain. At work, I smiled through meetings and deadlines, but my hands shook whenever my phone buzzed. Every vibration felt like another accusation waiting to be delivered. I stopped answering unknown numbers altogether. Even then, the weight of it followed me, into my dreams, into quiet moments when I'd normally unwind. I'd spent my entire life being the reasonable one. Now reason didn't matter. The lawsuit forced me to revisit memories I hadn't touched in years. As Amanda requested documentation, I dug through old bank statements, archived emails, dusty folders tucked into the back of my closet. There it was, proof of a pattern I'd never wanted to name. Transfers to my parents when my father's pension fell short, money for my mother's medical bills, payments labeled simply family help. Then the money I'd sent Ashley, the divorce retainer, rent, groceries, utilities, babysitting receipts I'd never charged for. Each document felt like reopening a wound I hadn't realized was still bleeding. The night before my first court meeting, I sat on my living room floor surrounded by stacks of paper, feeling like my life had been reduced to exhibits. I called the one person who hadn't taken sides. "Grandma Martha," I said when she answered. "Oh, sweetheart," she replied instantly. "I've been waiting for you to call." "I'm scared," I admitted. "What if the judge thinks I should have helped more?" She didn't hesitate. "Then that judge doesn't understand love. Real love doesn't come with invoices." Her certainty steadied me more than she probably knew. Court day arrived colder than expected. Gray sky, heavy air. I wore my navy suit, the one I reserved for presentations that mattered. I carried a briefcase full of evidence and a knot in my stomach I couldn't untangle. Grandma Martha sat in the front row on my side, silver hair perfectly styled, pearls at her throat, a quiet declaration of support. Across the aisle, my parents sat stiffly, Ashley between them. Behind them, a small army of relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. People who hadn't called me on my birthday. People who had no problem watching me be put on trial. The judge entered, a woman in her 50s with calm eyes and a posture that radiated authority. When she spoke, the room stilled. My father presented first. "We invested 33 years into raising our daughter," he said, voice firm. "We're simply asking for a portion of that investment back to help our other daughter and her children during a difficult time." Investment. I stared straight ahead, my jaw clenched. The judge flipped through the paperwork. "Did you contribute to Ms. Brooks' education after she turned 18? My parents exchanged glances. "Well," my father said slowly, Ashley had just gotten married, and we were helping her establish her household. So you did not contribute, the judge clarified. No, my mother said. But my mother helped with tuition. That should count as family support. Behind me, Grandma Martha made a sound I felt in my bones. When it was our turn, Amanda stood, composed and precise. Your Honor, she said, Ms. Brooks has been financially independent since age 18. Furthermore, she has provided repeated financial assistance to both her parents and her sister. She handed over the evidence. The judge reviewed it silently, then looked up. So the defendant wasn't receiving support, she said. She was providing it. Yes, Amanda replied. My mother shifted in her seat. That money isn't relevant. We're talking about the cost of raising a child. Why exactly do you need $380,000? The judge asked. The silence stretched. My mother glanced at Ashley, then spoke quietly. To help Ashley complete the mortgage payments on her new home. The judge's expression didn't change, but something hardened in her eyes. She turned to Ashley. Do you believe your sister should be responsible for your mortgage? Ashley swallowed. She doesn't have a husband or children. I do. And that creates a financial obligation? The judge asked. We're family, Ashley said weakly. The judge raised an eyebrow. I'm not married either. Should I be paying my clerk's rent? Ashley said nothing. The questioning continued, direct, unrelenting. Why assume I would pay? Why buy a house she couldn't afford? Why equate love with obligation? For the first time in my life, someone was asking the questions I'd swallowed for decades. The verdict came a week later. Case dismissed, the judge said firmly. Legally groundless, morally reprehensible. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed. But freedom didn't come with reconciliation. A week later, Grandma Martha called. Your mother asked me to release her inheritance early, she said, to pay off Ashley's mortgage. I closed my eyes. She cried, Grandma added, but not about losing you. 6 months passed quietly. I bought a small bungalow in West Hartford, painted the kitchen yellow, planted a garden, adopted a tabby cat named Ginger. Ashley kept the house by renting out the basement. She moved back in with our parents. They made it work, without my money. Almost a year later, an email appeared. No subject line. Since you have extra space now, it would be best if Ashley and the girls moved in with you, I replied once. Then I blocked them. Peace didn't arrive all at once, but it stayed. And for the first time, my life felt like my own. The ruling should have been the end. Legally, it was. Emotionally, it felt more like standing in the quiet after an explosion, ears ringing, air thick with dust, trying to understand what was still standing and what had been permanently destroyed. In the days after the verdict, I moved through my life like someone relearning how to exist in her own body. I woke up expecting my phone to be full of missed calls, accusations, guilt wrapped in concern. But there was nothing. No messages, no apologies, no acknowledgement that my parents had tried and failed to take nearly $400,000 from their own daughter. The silence wasn't peaceful at first. It was hollow. At work, my focus sharpened in strange ways. Numbers made sense when people didn't. Balance sheets didn't accuse. Spreadsheets didn't ask why I hadn't sacrificed more. I stayed late, not because I needed to, but because going home meant sitting alone with thoughts I couldn't fully quiet yet. Amanda checked in once, professionally satisfied. If they contact you again with demands, she said, we can file a harassment complaint. Her tone was calm, detached. For her, this was a case. For me, it was my childhood put on trial. A few days later, Grandma Martha came to visit. She brought soup I didn't need and cookies I pretended I wouldn't eat, but absolutely did. We sat at my small kitchen table, the afternoon light slanting across the counter. I didn't raise your mother to be like this, she said softly, staring into her tea. But somewhere along the way, she decided love was transactional. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice not to crack. They still don't think they were wrong, Grandma continued. They think the court humiliated them. Not me, I noticed. Them. That night, I finally allowed myself to feel angry. Not the sharp, explosive kind. The slow, grieving anger that comes when you accept something irreversible. I cried for the little girl who learned early that being easy made adults comfortable, for the teenager who never asked for help because she was praised for not needing it, for the woman who believed love could be earned through reliability. I slept deeply for the first time in months. 6 months passed. I closed on the bungalow in West Hartford in early spring. It wasn't large. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a creaky front porch, and a backyard that needed work. But it was mine. every inch of it. I painted the kitchen yellow, the kind of yellow my mother once called impractical. I planted tomatoes and basil in the yard. I adopted a striped tabby from the shelter because she kept reaching her paw through the cage when I walked by. I named her Ginger. Ashley, I heard through secondhand channels, rented out her basement to cover the mortgage. Eventually, she and the girls moved back in with my parents. My mother babysat while Ashley worked full-time at the courthouse. They found a way. They always had. They just preferred when the solution was me. I didn't call. I didn't write. I didn't send birthday cards or holiday gifts. The quiet became something like stability, something I protected. Then, almost a year after the trial, the email arrived. No subject line, just a block of text that felt painfully familiar. We heard you bought a house. Since you have extra space now, we think it would be best if Ashley and the girls moved in with you. It would be much more convenient for everyone. Let us know when they can move in. Love, Mom and Dad. I read it twice. I didn't feel shocked. I felt clear. I typed my response carefully. I will not be housing Ashley or the girls. If you contact me again with demands like this, I will report the harassment. Do not email me again. I hit send, blocked the address, made myself a cup of tea. That was the moment I understood something important. They weren't confused. They weren't desperate. They were consistent. They believed my life existed to absorb the consequences of theirs. That belief had cost them their daughter. A few months later, something unexpected happened. I met Andrew. He was a high school history teacher with laugh lines around his eyes and a habit of listening without trying to fix things. We met at a friend's dinner party. He asked what I did. I asked what he taught. We talked about books, travel, the strange comfort of routines. He didn't ask about my family right away. When he eventually did, weeks later, his question was gentle. Are you close with them? I paused, then answered honestly, no. He nodded. That happens. No judgment, no advice, no insistence that blood meant obligation. Just acceptance. We took things slowly. Walks, coffee, dinners that didn't feel like auditions. He laughed easily. He didn't flinch when I said no to things. He didn't expect me to overextend to prove my worth. For the first time, being with someone felt like addition, not subtraction. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about Mila and Sophia. I wonder what they've been told. I wonder if they'll reach out someday, curious about the aunt who disappeared from family photos. If they do, I'll decide then. But I don't wait for those calls. My house smells like coffee and fresh herbs now. Ginger sleeps on my laptop while I work. The tomatoes in my garden are finally ripening. It's quiet here. No raised voices, no guilt disguised as love, no expectations I didn't agree to. I used to think peace was something you earned. Now I know better. Peace is something you claim, one boundary at a time. By the time summer arrived, my life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost unfamiliar in its steadiness. Mornings were quiet. I woke with sunlight filtering through the curtains instead of anxiety buzzing in my chest. I made coffee and stood at the kitchen counter, watching Ginger patrol the windowsill like she was guarding the house from imaginary threats. Sometimes I caught myself smiling for no reason at all, just because nothing hurt in that moment. For years, I had lived braced for impact. Now there was nothing to brace against. Andrew came over most weekends. He never announced himself with expectations. He asked before rearranging anything in my kitchen. He remembered small details, how I liked my tea, which songs I skipped when they came on the radio, the fact that I needed quiet after long work weeks. One night, as we sat on the porch watching the sky deepen into indigo, he asked gently, "Do you ever miss them?" I knew exactly who he meant. I considered the question honestly. I miss the idea of parents, I said, not the reality of mine. He nodded. That makes sense. That was it. No lecture, no insistence on forgiveness as a moral obligation, just space. It struck me then how radical that felt. Forgiveness had always been presented to me as something mandatory, something good daughters offered, even when it came at their own expense. But distance had taught me a quieter truth. Forgiveness without change is just permission. I didn't owe permission anymore. Occasionally, news filtered through Grandma Martha, not gossip, just updates, offered without agenda. My parents had stopped talking about me publicly after the lawsuit. The narrative of me as the ungrateful daughter didn't hold up well once people learned they'd taken me to court. Some relatives drifted away quietly. Others avoided the topic altogether. Ashley, according to Grandma, seemed tired, older than her years. The house was still a financial strain. even with the rental income. My mother babysat constantly, her resentment simmering just beneath the surface. "Your sister doesn't say your name," Grandma told me once, "but she notices your absence." I didn't respond. Absence had been my loudest boundary. There were moments, small, sharp ones, when guilt tried to resurface. Birthdays, holidays, random memories triggered by photos I stumbled across while cleaning out old files. But guilt no longer rooted itself the way it once had. I'd learned to recognize it for what it was, a reflex trained by years of emotional conditioning. And reflexes can be unlearned. One afternoon, almost a year and a half after the verdict, I received a message request on social media from a name I didn't recognize at first. Mila Brooks. My heart skipped. The profile picture showed a girl on the edge of adolescence, smiling shyly at the camera. She must have created the account without her mother's knowledge. Or maybe with it. I had no way of knowing. The message was short. "Hi, Aunt Lillian. Grandma said you don't talk to us anymore. I just wanted to say I hope you're okay." I stared at the screen for a long time. This was the moment I'd imagined, in quiet, vulnerable corners of my mind. The moment that tested whether my boundaries were walls or doors. I typed, deleted, typed again. Then I wrote, "Hi Mila, I'm okay. I hope you and Sophia are doing well. I care about you both very much." I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I didn't reopen the past. Sometimes protecting your peace doesn't mean erasing love. It means placing it where it can't be weaponized. She responded with a heart emoji. That was enough. Andrew found me later that evening sitting on the porch steps, phone in my hand. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said and meant it. The rest of the year unfolded quietly. Work promotions, small trips, lazy Sundays. I hosted friends in my yellow kitchen and listened to laughter echo where tension used to live. And one evening, while Andrew washed dishes and Ginger supervised from the counter, I realized something that stopped me cold. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for apologies, not for understanding, not for permission to live fully. I'd spent decades believing that family was the axis around which my life should spin, that love was proven through endurance, that good daughters absorbed discomfort so others didn't have to feel it. But peace had taught me a different definition of love. Love that doesn't demand. Love that doesn't keep score. Love that doesn't sue you when you say no. My parents may still tell their version of the story. One where I chose money over family. One where I failed some invisible moral test of sacrifice. Let them. I wake up each morning in a home I chose. I share my life with someone who sees me, not for what I can provide, but for who I am. I drink coffee in silence that feels earned, not empty. And when I look in the mirror now, I don't see the daughter who fell short. I see a woman who finally stepped out of a role that was slowly breaking her. Some bridges don't need rebuilding. Some ties don't need mending. Because peace, real peace, isn't something you're given when you behave well enough. It's something you claim. And once you do, you never give it back.